Good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Shannon, and today we are going to be picking my March TBR by using a TBR jar. Now, here's my thinking. This video has just looked so fun when I've seen other people do it, and if you watched my Counting My Physical TBR video, you would know my physical TBR is very, very big, and I feel like this might be a way to get me more interested in the books that I've kind of forgotten about on my shelves. Anywho, I printed out about, I think, 60-ish prompts this morning, so let's just get started. Kind of feel like Effie Trinket. Okay. First one just says a popular book. That could be a lot of things. I think I know what I'm gonna pick. One second. So for this prompt, I'm actually going to be picking Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I know that this isn't in its biggest type phase right now, but some of the creators that I watch have been talking a lot about this book, and it's been getting me very intrigued and wanting to go back into this world that Stephanie Garber has created. I was a little unconventional in the way I approached this universe because I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy before I read this, and hopefully it won't impact how I feel about it too much, but I am really interested in reading this. Next. A book that matches the current season. I don't know, because technically it's winter, but to me, I mean, the weather's still cold and stuff, but I've been getting spring vibes lately. I don't know. I have an idea of what I could pick, but that is very ambitious of me. I think I'm gonna pick it anyway. One second. So, like it said, a book that matches the current season. And what could fit winter more than the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire? I am very intrigued in reading this. I've been wanting to read this universe for a very, very long time. This book, A Game of Thrones, is the first book in the series that follows the Game of Thrones TV show, and I never watched that, so I think I would be the perfect candidate to read these books because I have a very unbiased opinion. But I am very excited that this managed to find its way on my TBR because I've been thinking about it a lot. A character name in the title. Now there's one that obviously jumps out at me, but I don't think I want to read it this month. I may actually have to really look to find a book that gets me out of this. Oh, okay. So for me, the obvious choice was Magnolia Park's Into the Dark, but I'm very scared of reading that book right now, so I found a different book where the character name was in the title, and it is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I've heard so many good things about this book. I have not read fantasy in quite a bit, and I think this book will be the perfect introduction back because from what I've heard, this is a very cozy fantasy vibes book, and I have been wanting to get more into this, especially since the second book came out. But as the title depicts, it is Emily Wilde endeavoring to make an encyclopedia of fairies. Anyhow. Also, I don't know if I said this, I'm going to be picking 10 books from this. A book you've had for a long time. That could be said about a lot of these books. I think I'm gonna try to get a romance just because I've already picked 3 fantasy books. I honestly think I'm gonna have to choose fantasy because all of these romance books aren't that old to my shelves. I don't know. One second. Okay, I think I found a good book for a book that's been on my shelf for a really long time, and it is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I have been interested in this book for a very, very long time. I think I've owned it for probably 2 years now. This, from what I've come to understand, this is a 1920s gangster romance based in China that's also based on Romeo and Juliet. And that kind of sounds perfect to me. I just think it sounds really, really good, and one of my favorite bookstagrammers just finished this duology and has basically been raving about it, and so I really, really want to know what the hype is all about. A standalone. Definitely gonna pick a romance because we already have 4 fantasy books on my TBR. I know what I'm gonna pick. Okay, for a standalone, I decided on Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. This is a book where Miss Abby moves to London for a year abroad, and when she gets to her flat, she discovers that all of her flatmates are guys. And one of them is a very cute rugby player that's Australian, and then I think she also has a love interest in a musician. I did start this. I got 70 pages in, and then I decided to take a break because the second love interest we were introduced to has a girlfriend. And if you've watched my channel, you know that's like a hard pass for me in any book. So I'm a little hesitant to read this, but the concept of the flatmates and everything, it really reminds me of New Girl, which is a TV show, and I loved that, so I'm gonna give it another chance and finish it. A book that has over 500 pages. I was hoping I wouldn't get this one. Okay, I decided on The Final Strife by Sarah El Arifi. This is the first book in a trilogy where blood dictates your place in society, basically. And Scylla was basically born a disappointment to her mother, I believe because she has the wrong kind of blood. But it just seems very, very interesting. And it's quite a big book, so. Okay, we got 4 more. A book that ends in an odd number of pages that definitely shouldn't be too hard. Okay, for this one, I've decided on Practice Meets Perfect by Sarah Adams. This is the second in, I don't know if there's going to be another one, but this is the second book in the same universe as When in Rome, which was a very cute romance that I rated 5 stars. This is about the baker's little sister and the singer's bodyguard from the first book and their romance, and I think it's going to be so, so good. I absolutely loved his sister in When in Rome, and I'm very excited to see her get her romance, although I would like to see all of the sisters' romances eventually. Hey, I dropped one. A book with a giant first sentence. That's a very specific. Let me check one. Okay, the first book I picked up happened to have a very long first sentence, and I'm going to read it to you guys before I tell you the title. This war of ours, the one between the vampires and the wares, began several centuries ago with brutal escalations of violence, culminated amid flowing torrents of varicolored blood, and ended in a whimper of buttercream cake on the day I met my husband for the first time. If you couldn't already guess, it's Bride by Miss Allie Hazelwood. This is the first dabble into fantasy that Miss Allie Hazelwood has taken, and I, for one, am ecstatic to read it. I've seen some very off-the-wall comments made about this book, both on BookTube and BookTok, and I'm just very interested to see what all the hype's about for this book. A book with a one-word title. I feel like this should be fairly easy. I'm just in such a fantasy mood, but I don't want to stack my TBR with fantasy. I think I know what I'm gonna pick. For a book with one word title, I'm going to be choosing Scarlet by Miss Marissa Meyer. I read Cinder over a year ago now, which is crazy to think, but I really enjoyed that book. Albeit, I was not aware that it wasn't a standalone series, and so I only got Cinder, and I finished it and I was left screaming slack-jawed, so upset, because I was under the impression that that book would conclude that specific romance, and it did not. But this is the second book in the series. This is a series filled with fairy tale retellings, and the first one was Cinderella. This one, I believe, is Red Riding Hood, and the other ones are Rapunzel and Snow White retellings. But they are all, like, this is a full series. You can't read one without the other. But I am very, very excited to get back into this series now that I have recovered from my anger at it not being an interconnected standalone. Okay, we only have one more book left. I feel like I really need to make this one count. Makes me nervous. A genre you don't usually read. I know exactly what I want to pick for this one. Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. I saw this at the bookstore the last time I went book shopping. It's actually in my most recent book haul. But this instantly intrigues me because it's all about thriller authors that are all stuck on a train, and one of them ends up dead. And the tagline for the book is, how can you find a killer when all the suspects know how to get away with murder? Because they're all mystery thriller writers, and I just think it sounds so good. And it's also based in Australia, which I'll have to do some research because I don't know if Benjamin Stevenson is Australian, but I think that sounds really interesting. And I'm just so excited to read this book because I've been kind of in a book slump. I don't really know why. I think I just binged on books too much, but this book has me excited to read for the first time basically all month. And I realize it's not March yet, but you bet your ass I'm going to be reading this first thing in March. And I'm just very excited to get to it. But that is the 10th book, so that unfortunately concludes today's video. I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. All of my social medias are linked down below for you guys. Make sure you turn on the post notification bell so you guys can get notified right when I post a new video. I hope you guys are all having an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!